Hello everyone, Rich here, and I did a tutorial series on NumPy, and I briefly mentioned that I had a cloth engine that I built in NumPy to show performance of NumPy, and apparently a lot of people are interested in that cloth, so this is just a quick overview of what it does and where you can get it. So if you go to GitHub and you go to the 3D Advantage at GitHub, and then you go to, let me just show you real quick. So github.com/the3dadvantage, and then you click on modeling cloth, then you get this modeling cloth repository. You can click on clone or download the zip file, and then when you go into Blender, you will go to your add-ons, so open up the user preferences, go to add-ons, and do install from file, and you just navigate to that zip folder, install the zip folder, and it will give you everything. So it's fairly easy. And when I say everything, if you do that, you get the modeling cloth add-on, you get the surface follow add-on, you get the UV shape tool, and you also get the dynamic tension map. So those all come if you just do that, clone that repository, and it will install this extended tools tab right here. I don't know if you can see that, but you get this extended tools tab that has all these cool things on it. So what is modeling cloth? Well, it's basically a cloth that you can interact with in real time. And this add-on is very new, it's very experimental, so it's kind of buggy, and it can crash Blender if like you're deleting files or you're deleting shape keys or different things that it's expecting to see. Some weird stuff can happen, so just be aware of that. Make sure you save your projects before you start experimenting with this add-on. So you select an object and you go over here. It's going to look like this. In fact, let's just start with a brand new object so you can see. So I'm going to create a mesh here, just a plane, and I'm going to subdivide it a bunch of times. And now I'm going to say this is a modeling cloth object. So we're in the extended tools tab. We have this thing selected, it's our active object. We hit modeling cloth, and then we hit play. And theoretically nothing should happen, except that I have a little bit of noise turned on, so there's going to be these tiny little wrinkles that start to appear. If I put a little more noise on there, you'll start to see what I'm talking about. And that lighting is kind of terrible, but I don't really care. So this is going to behave like cloth, but it's going to be running all the time. It's running in a scene update handler, so just anything that cues the scene update is going to make this thing work. So now we have this. It basically just maintains the surface area of the object. And then we have a few cool features here. Oops. So we have, actually I'm going to set this to smooth so that you can see it a little better. So we have the number of iterations, and this will calculate the springs. So it will cost you performance time the higher you turn this up, but it will make the cloth behave as if it's stiffer. So it will respond a little bit more quickly if you turn that up. You can scale the stiffness if you want it to be really, really stretchy. So I can turn this way down, and now it'll be super, super stretchy. It'll take its time to do whatever it does. You can add noise to it, and noise just adds some randomness to the cloth. This is how long the noise keeps going before it goes away. If you set it to 1, then the noise will just keep moving it around sort of indefinitely. So I can turn the noise decay down, turn the noise down to 0, whatever. Gravity will actually make it fall like regular cloth, or rise if you set it to a positive value. Inflate actually moves it along the normals, so let me just show you what that does with something like a cube. Okay, so I've added this cube. I'm going to subdivide this cube a few times, and we're going to turn on modeling cloth, and we're going to set play, and then we're going to add a tiny bit of inflate, and it will blow up like a balloon. And if you have, like, we're going to separate this, it's still inflating. Well, it's moving along the normals, so it's just going to keep going in that direction. Sewing force is if you have edges that are not, don't have faces around them. So just like Blender's internal cloth engine, let's say you did, we're going to delete only faces here. So now we have a bunch of edges, and we're going to hit play again. If we turn up the sewing force, well, those edges are going to be treated like sewing edges, and they're going to draw it together. Now, the inflation is working against that, so you'd have to turn it up. But yeah, oh, and you can actually set the sewing force to negative. That's interesting. I'm going to reset that. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, the reset button basically takes it back to its original starting shape. So we've got this nice cloth with the inflation set up to whatever. You can, inflate it even more, make it almost round, all that sort of fun stuff. You can make it sew. The idea here is to be able to interact with it in real time. Velocity is if you want it to behave like real cloth. I've got the velocity set to 0.9, but if I set it to like 0.999, almost 1, and I grab it, then it's going to keep going, and it's going to behave like it has very little resistance. So it's going to wobble and do that kind of stuff. So just it's just velocity decay. So you'll see it settles down if we turn that down lower. And we can actually, if we wanted to, we could set it to 1.001, and now it'll keep building velocity, and then it just starts going crazy. Maybe even more, 1.01. Then grab it, and it's going to just keep accelerating until it goes completely nuts. So, user beware. I don't have any of the safeties turned on. This thing will go crazy if you want it to. It's just going to keep going faster and faster because it's compounding its existing velocity. So yeah, it'll just, it does that. Alright. Create pins it's a modal tool. So it will pin at a vertex. So I'm going to put a pin right there and a pin right there, and it'll just keep doing this as long as you want to keep clicking. And now it's already got these pins selected, and it is now hooked to these objects. So you could parent them to something if you wanted to. You could add another empty there. And then this will let you select the pins that you've created, which I find convenient. And now we control parent those, and now these pins are all connected to that, and you can, do that sort of thing. If you don't want to go through this annoying process of clicking on individual points to pin them, you can also go into edit mode and select a whole bunch of stuff, whatever you want to select, and you can do pin selected, and it will create pins everywhere that you have a vertex selected. And now these are all connected as pins, and you can do whatever you want with that. Scale them up or down. Wait, cursor just selected. There we go. All that sort of stuff. So the idea here is to be able to work with the cloth in real time so that you can quickly add pins and move them around and select the pins and all that sort of stuff. It's more of a modeling tool than an animation tool, although you can actually use it for animation. I've done quite a bit of animation with it, and it works fine. For convenience, you can select all these pins, and if you just delete these pins, they will go away on the screen, but they don't remove their data from the add-on. So the model will still behave as if the pins are there. You just won't be able to do anything with them. So what you want to do is, if you want to get rid of these, you select pins, whichever pins you want, and then you use the tools delete pins function to delete them, and it will get rid of them, and it will update the engine so that it behaves correctly. So let me just show you. I think it'll screw things up here if I do this, but say I create a pin right there, and I just hit X and I delete it. it's going to behave weird because the engine doesn't know what to do with that. Yeah, so if you hit delete pins, it will actually update the data inside the cloth engine so that it'll behave correctly. You can grow the source shape, and what that does is it makes it larger. So it says the springs are larger, or it will say the springs are smaller. The self-collision, I will show you that in just a second, but let me show you some details here that are important. Oh, you don't need that. You go away. The way that this is working is over here we have our basis shape key. As soon as you turn on modeling cloth, and in fact, let me just pause this and just turn off modeling cloth so you can see what's going on here. And I'm going to get rid of these shape keys. So this is my starting shape. And when I go over here and I create modeling cloth, it generates 3 shape keys. It generates the basis shape. It generates, I don't know, can you see that? Basis shape, the modeling cloth source key, and the modeling cloth key. And what it's doing is it's using the source key to get the target distances for all of these edges and all of these springs. There's diagonal springs in there. There's these straight springs between all of the vertices, and all of that data is derived from this source key. So we hit play here, and I've got the sewing force still set up, but that's why it pulled together. If I go into the modeling cloth source key and I say all of these springs are now smaller, well, it's going to shrink down to that size because it's targeting the size of the source key. So if I make it larger, it's going to go back to that. And it's updating that data and it's sending it to the modeling cloth key. So if I turn this off, it goes back to its original shape. So all that data for the behavior of the modeling cloth is written to this modeling cloth key. If you want to, you can make really specific changes to the source key. So like I could stretch this point out, and now the modeling cloth key is going to update to those changes. So there's some really interesting stuff you can do with that. Like, I don't know, whatever you can think of. I've come up with some really interesting things by doing that and playing with it. So, you know, be my guest to come up with cool things and show me. Let's see, we've got the self-collision, and I'm going to go ahead and just start over with a new shape here for the self-collision. Turn off modeling cloth to this guy and get rid of him, and add a mesh plane. And I'm going to subdivide it a bunch of times, and I'm going to say this is modeling cloth now, and I'm going to say pin selected, and if we hit play, then this now behaves as modeling cloth. Alright, now I want to turn on a little bit of gravity with this pinned, and I'm going to turn up the stiffness, and well, if you turn up the stiffness too high, it actually gets unstable. So we'll just turn it up to 1 and turn up the iterations a couple of times so that it stabilizes. Actually, I want to set this to smooth just so it looks nice. Back to my tool here. Oh, I moved those pins, so I don't like those pins there. I'm going to select those pins, delete those pins, and reset it. Okay. I'm going to pause it and reset it. Now I'm going to pin selected, and now theoretically when I start, alright, so it's falling like I would expect. And you'll notice that you get these, the cloth is going through itself like you would expect if there's no self-collisions turned on. So if I enable the basic self-collisions, it's not a super accurate collision model, but it will do certain things, and it's not super stable. But if you're just using it as a modeling tool, then it should generally prevent the cloth from going through itself. the way that it's working is it's just using like a radius around each polygon, so that's why it's fast, because it's a very simple kind of crude algorithm. But that's also why it's unstable and it is not flawless. But if you're using it for things like, towels hanging on a rack or curtains or that kind of stuff, then it actually works pretty well for that. So I'm just going to reset that. One of the other things that this includes, let's see, does it have, yeah, vertex groups. So if you don't want to use these pins, you can actually just go in here, and this modeling cloth pin vertex group is automatically added. And it will treat those as if they're solid if you set their weight to 1. So I've selected this area across here and assigned it a weight of 1. And now when I hit play, then that area is now stiff. It doesn't have pins on it that you can control, but it basically is ignoring the cloth simulation for those vertices. Let me just show you something practical you could do real quick here. So we'll turn the modeling cloth off on this guy and just get rid of him. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And theoretically it won't crash because I turned modeling cloth off first. I notice if you have modeling cloth on and you delete the object, sometimes it can crash Blender. It's just a bug I haven't tracked down yet. Like I said, it's really experimental. So as a practical application of something you can do, we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to, let's see, we want to, here, I'm just going to select all the exterior edges, and I'm going to scale them on the z-axis to 0, and I'm going to remove doubles, so that they're now just one continuous thing. And I'm also going to scale the whole thing on the z-axis to 0. And, oh, you know what, before I do that, I'm going to recalculate the normals so that they're all pointing outside. So I just hit Control-N, recalculated all the normals. And that's important because I'm going to inflate this, and for the inflate to work correctly, the normals have to be all pointing outwards. Alright, so now I'm going to scale it down on the z-axis, and I'm going to make it into modeling cloth. I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to set the inflate up a little tiny bit. So now it will behave kind of like a pillow. And it's going crazy here. So I turned up the stiffness iteration so that the cloth springs would pull back against the inflate springs. And I think I'm going to turn this down a little bit more too. Well, we'll turn it down a lot more. And now you can get kind of a pillow kind of shape, and if you play with it a little bit, you can actually get, wrinkles here like a real pillow would have. So I don't know, sometimes modeling a pillow is hard, but it's obviously super easy using this. Another really cool thing that this does is virtual springs. So let me see if I can give you a quick explanation of what the virtual springs are. There's underneath the pin selected, so here's the very top, you go all the way down here, you have pin selected, and you have add virtual springs. Virtual springs will put springs into the engine that you can't see, and it will apply them to whatever is selected. It will basically connect everything that's selected with virtual springs that only the engine can see. So for example, if I select this vertex here and the one below it, and I say add virtual spring, now I go into my cloth shape key, it's now going to try to pull those two places together. So I could do something like add a virtual spring here, add another one here. I'm selecting two vertices and connecting them when I hit add virtual springs. Add one here. And now I have a pillow that has like buttons in it. So I think that makes sense. Now if let's see, we're going to stop this one, I'm going to show you something else. So turn off modeling cloth, And you now have this lovely model pillow, and the model is in this modeling cloth key. That's where the changes are stored. So if we turn it down, you can see it goes back to what it was. So, theoretically the modeling cloth is non-destructive, but you can keep whatever the current shape is because it's in this shape key that you can control. Alright, so let's go to that, and I wanted to show you something else you can do with the virtual springs. Virtual springs adds springs to everything that's selected. So there will be a spring between this point and every other point in the mesh, and this point and every other point, and this point and every other one. So if you have 100,000 vertices and you try to run modeling cloth, it's going to be a little bit laggy. If you add virtual springs to every one of those, it's going to be crazy laggy because it's trying to calculate n times n springs, like trillions of springs. So be aware of that. Don't select all and add virtual springs in a really dense mesh. But I only have 26 vertices in here, so I'm going to go ahead and let's see. First we need to set this to modeling cloth. The virtual springs only shows up in edit mode, so you go into edit mode, and then underneath this pin selected, so you can create pins when it's in object mode, by the way. It turns into pin selected when you're in edit mode, and then it has this option to add virtual springs. You can also remove virtual springs from the selected. So I'm going to add virtual springs to everything. Now when I hit play, this is going to behave more like a soft body object because it's trying to maintain its shape and it's connected to everything. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So this little floor checkbox here, I didn't talk about that yet. What that does is it's the most basic kind of collision you can do, and it's taking the origin of the object and it's going to check if the object has fallen below its own origin. So if I turn on gravity, it's going to fall. I'm going to turn gravity back up so it falls back upwards because that's kind of cool. I'm going to turn on floor now and turn on gravity, and what it does is it's going to come down and it's going to collide with its own origin. So, and this is relative to the object. In fact, all of these things are relative to the object. So gravity is relative to the orientation of the object. It's going to crash into its own origin and stop. So, just for fun, let's do like this. Now this one I didn't add virtual springs to. So I'll go ahead and add virtual springs to that one now. And reset it. And set the velocity to 1. And I don't have self-collisions turned on. Actually, I'm not sure what would happen. Let's try it with self-collisions and see how well it works. Not very well, but like I said, it's not a very accurate self-collision model, so I don't expect it to be perfect. I plan to keep working on that as time allows, but for now, I don't expect to see the collisions improve for probably, I don't know, a couple of weeks at least. If somebody else wants to pick this up, it's all open source, it's all on GitHub. You want to keep developing on it, that would be awesome. I would welcome anybody who wants to contribute to this project. Alright, let's do something cool for fun. I'm going to add a UV sphere. Actually, I think an icosphere would work better because it has an even bunch of triangles. So we're going to add an icosphere. And we're going to move it like that. We're going to say this is now a modeling cloth. We're going to turn the floor on. We're going to turn velocity up. Turn gravity down. Hit play. Now it's going to fall. It's going to crash into the floor. Now let's add a bunch of virtual springs. We're going to add virtual springs to everything. Add virtual springs. It doesn't look like anything happened, but believe me, something happened. And now when I hit play, it's going to do its thing where it collides with the floor. Now I want to turn on this other tool, which is the dynamic tension map. And it creates a vertex shader. Where is it? Yeah, it creates this tension vertex color. and it applies that tension map as the material. If you turn it off, it goes back to whatever material you had. While this is on, it's going to show you where the stretch is. So I don't know if that showed up. Let me see. But basically any distortion, it's going to show it. And it's hard to see it in this example, so let me just make a new example real quick. Alright, we're going to subdivide this plane a bunch of times, rotate it on the x-axis just for fun, and we're going to, I'm going to pin these, so pin selected, got all these pins now, turn on modeling cloth, and then I'm going to turn on the dynamic tension map. And wherever the stretch is, it will turn red. Blue is basically no stretch, red is lots of stretch. And it's actually, right now the max stretch is set to 20, which means that when it stretches to, I think the way this is set up, when it stretches to 20%, it will be completely red. So say it's 10 blender units for a square. When it gets to a stretch of 2 blender units and it's set at 20, it'll be red, because 2 is 20% of 10. So let me just show you. You grab it, right here and pull. You see the stretch propagates through it in a wave. It's kind of cool looking. And then if you adjust this max stretch value, it will either, it sets the max stretch, so at the point it turns red, it will be where it's at 25% now. It's going to be bright red. Or if you set it way down, and anywhere it's stretched 3%, it's bright red. I like to use it to debug distortions and things like that. So let me do one other really cool thing here. I think I've showed all of the features that I have. Let me turn the modeling cloth off here and just delete this and create an icosphere, and I'm going to subdivide this icosphere, and I'm going to turn on modeling cloth first, and then I'm going to add virtual springs. I'm going to move it above its origin so that I can use floor. Turn on floor, turn up velocity, turn down the gravity. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit more so it falls. And then I'm going to hit play. And oh, it's kind of slow because it has so many virtual springs and it has a bunch of... So let's unsubdivide that a little bit. Yeah, that's a little bit more reasonable. Modeling cloth, add virtual springs, and velocity is set to 1, gravity is set to whatever. Alright, so now it's going to fall a little bit more. Now I want to, let's turn the gravity way up, or way down, so it's really low, lots of gravity. And let's turn the stiffness down so it's kind of squishy. And now let's turn on the dynamic tension map so you can see what it's doing. And I'm just going to play with it because it's cool. Maybe we'll inflate this thing, because that'd be cool too. Alright. Whoa, we're getting instabilities. Reset. Abort, abort. I just turned on a subdivision surface modifier just to make it look cool, and I think it's because my velocity is set up here. And we're going to turn the max stretch down, so... Oops. Oh, turn it up, sorry. Yeah. And I just did this because it looks cool and it gives you an idea of some stuff you can do with it. Whoa! Yeah, it's freaking out. Anyway, this isn't a very good example. I've had some that looked really cool, but you get the idea. Alright, so that's just an overview of modeling cloth, where it's at right now. I've included the surface follow script, the latest one that I created. So in fact, let me just show you what that does real quick in case you forgot. So I'm going to hide this. Let's see. I'm going to select the other lights, hide them. Okay. Now this is a dress that I got from another project, and we're going to turn it into modeling cloth, and we're going to hit play. And so now you can, grab this dress and work with it and interact with it as if it were cloth. It's got sewing springs in it, so I can turn up my sewing force and it will sew those parts together and so on and so forth. You can use this to make clothes. It actually works pretty well. There's a glitch in the sewing springs where multiple springs connect together. I haven't fixed that yet. You turn on the dynamic tension map down here, then you get this cool effect that you can see where you get that wave that moves through the object as the stretch is moving, and it's got all that cool stuff. What was it I was going to show you? Dang it, I'm forgetting. Grrr. Oh, surface follow. So the surface follow add-on works fine with the modeling cloth add-on. Let me just pause it, and I'm going to add, I don't know, some cubes. Cubes are easy. Alright, so we select these cubes, and then whatever's selected, our active object, if we go down to our surface follow add-on and bind to surface, and we're going to set it to scene update, not obscene update. And then we're going to select play on our modeling cloth, and now those cubes should follow it. So now those cubes are bound to the surface of the modeling cloth object. And, use your imagination. I'm sure you can think of some other stuff to do with it. So that's it for now. That's Introduction to Modeling Cloth. It's very experimental. I've got a lot of features that I still need to add, but I was able to quickly make tents and simple garment stuff and pillows and stuff like that, or adjust existing clothing. It's actually useful for a lot of modeling things. I made a slinky by taking a cylinder. Maybe I'll do that real quick. We're going to turn modeling cloth off there. We're going to add a cylinder. And the modeling cloth actually works really well with n-gons, by the way. A lot of stuff you might think it doesn't, but modeling cloth loves n-gons. So we're going to turn this into modeling cloth. We're going to pin the top and the bottom, pin selected. And now when we hit play and we do these ones, you get this kind of behavior, which is cool. If you can use surface bind and make a spiral around it, and you get a slinky kind of effect, which is really cool. Slinky like the toy, not slinky like negligee, just in case you got that confused. And now if we do virtual springs, and let's say we added virtual springs just here so that all of this is selected, add virtual springs. Now we get this one area that is going to maintain its volume right there. So let's add a few more virtual springs. Let's add one there. And let's add a set there. And now we select these pins, and in those areas it's going to maintain that volume. If we go into the source key and we say this area is larger, now it's got this cool spot in it that's bigger. So as you can imagine, you can do all kinds of cool stuff with this, and if you parented this to your animated avatar or something, it's gonna give it whatever behavior you want. And by using the virtual springs, you can get a mix of cloth animation type effects and soft body animation type effects. You can inflate this, and it's gonna be like a balloon with those virtual springs connected there, which I think is kind of cool. So Use your imagination, and of course, link me videos if you make cool videos and you do something awesome with this. I would love to see what you do. So yeah, I hope you get some cool use out of this, and I figure there will be feature requests, and I'm hoping that another developer would go onto the GitHub site and make a fork and add new features and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So maybe this is the start of something really cool. Let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks!